5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Science holds the key to our survival as a planet.
But science is cumulative.
Modern science
is the knowledge.
Hello and welcome to our podcast. My name is Ali and I'll be your host for today's show. Being the first episode of 2016, we decided to postpone our weekly news until Thursday, and instead talk about all the important scientific discoveries that happened this past year. So let's get started. Neil deGrasse Tyson accepted the National Academy of Science Award. During his acceptance speech, he talked about the role of science in policy making in 272 words. And this is one of the most breathtaking and fascinating speeches I've ever listened to. So I'm going to play it out for you guys.
I got a phone call from the Abraham Lincoln Library Foundation, and they asked me, would I mind composing 272 words of my own, reflecting on Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. I'm going to read you what I wrote. 1.5 centuries ago, Civil War divided these United States of America. Yet in its wake, we would anneal as one nation indivisible. During the bloody year of his Gettysburg Address, President Lincoln chartered the National Academy of Sciences, comprised of 50 distinguished American researchers whose task was then, as now, to advise Congress and the executive branch of all the ways the frontier of science may contribute to the health, wealth, and security of its residents. As a young nation, just 7 years old, we had plucked the engineering fruits of the Industrial Revolution that had shaped Europe. But Americans had yet to embrace the meaning of science to society. Now, with more than 2,000 members, the National Academy encompasses dozens of fields undreamt of at the time of Lincoln's charter. Quantum physics, discovered in the 1920s, now drives nearly 1/3 of the world's wealth, forming the basis for our computer revolution in the creation, storage, and retrieval of information. And as we continue to warm our planet, climatology may be our only hope to save us from ourselves. During the centennial of its charter, President Kennedy addressed the Academy membership, noting,
"For the range and depth of scientific achievement represented in this room constitutes the seedbed of our nation's future."
In this, the 21st century, innovations in science and technology form the primary engines of economic growth. While most remember Honest Abe for war and peace, and slavery and freedom, the time has come to remember him for setting our nation on a course of scientifically enlightened governance, without which we may all perish from this earth.
Now I want you to tell me that wasn't one of the most amazing speeches you've ever heard. I've added the link in the description box if you want to watch the video. Moving on. 2015 marked the first year without polio in Africa. Nigeria, being the last country with recorded polio cases, finally marked its first polio-free year on July 24th. And this is a huge endeavor. They had to map every settlement in the north of the country. They had to count every child in every home. They had to deliver oral polio vaccines several times a year. They were working with hundreds of thousands of community leaders, in addition to operating in dangerous locations with known extremists. And when it began in 1988, the work to completely eradicate polio disease. It was still being contracted in 125 countries. And I have the pleasure to announce that there are only 2 more countries with cases of polio, Afghanistan and Pakistan. This means that polio has been wiped off of 99% of the map. This year's Nobel Prize in Medicine went to 3 researchers who developed tools to fight diseases for the poor, by which I mean diseases that are easily spread through poor communities, usually through unsanitary water sources. And so William C. Campbell of the US and Satoshi Omura of Japan were honored for their research that led to ivermectin, an extremely effective drug at fighting diseases caused by parasitic worms, which in turn causes diseases like river blindness. A researcher named Tu Youyou developed artemisinin, which makes malaria 100% treatable, which helps save over 100,000 lives each year. In other news, the SAT test preparation is now entirely free. The company that created the SAT exam helped the Khan Academy, which offers free educational videos in all kinds of topics concerning math, biology, chemistry, physics, which I use all the time, launch the free online learning portal, and I'll add a link in the description box. And a lot of older people that see the Khan Academy for the first time thought, well, hey, that would have been useful for when I was back in high school. Well, now you have the tools at your disposal. The Americas have managed to finally completely eliminate rubella. It has been determined the first region in the entire world to be free of rubella. This is after a 15-year effort to vaccinate men, women, and children. Rubella leads to death or severe birth defects when women get the disease during pregnancy. And so, cleaning the Americas from this terrible disease has prevented more than 100,000 children from contracting the disease, which ended up in turn saving over $7 billion that we can now use for other health purposes. And finally, this can also improve the efforts of eliminating measles, since the vaccine is given in combination with rubella vaccines. After a 9.5-year journey, NASA's New Horizons spacecraft flew past Pluto and gave us our first close-up look at the surface ice. Here's the picture. We can see mountains and smooth plains of ice. And from this picture, scientists were able to determine the planet's diameter of 1,472 miles, give or take a few miles. And so, some scientists argue that all these discoveries concerning Pluto should allow it to become a planet again. And I'm not going to go into details because the debate is a complete mess. A new species of fish have been discovered in the ocean's twilight zone, and that's the zone on the bottom of the ocean where the amount of light that reaches it is negligible. The species is named bristlemouth, and scientists have estimated their numbers to be no less than trillions, and maybe even quadrillions. And these fish are vertebrates, so compared to the number of humans, cats, and chickens, which are all vertebrates, of which there are only a couple billion individuals, so these numbers are huge. 2015 marked 100 years since Einstein's theory of general relativity, in 1915. And the theory's basic idea is that it describes how matter and energy warp space-time. And I won't be going into details because I'll be doing a special episode on Einstein's life and his discoveries. And so 2015 brought many advancements concerning his life's work. Firstly, it brought progress in understanding part of his theory, that space-time cloaks itself around massive objects and brings them out of existence within black holes. Researchers are combining radio antennas to create a huge telescope that will be able to produce images of a black hole in the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Scientists are also tracking 2 black holes that are circling each other, only around 3.5 billion light years away, which means that the light takes 3.5 billion years to reach us from these 2 black holes. And in Hollywood news, Eddie Redmayne won the Oscar for Best Actor for portraying Stephen Hawking, the black hole expert, in the movie The Theory of Everything. To talk about DNA, if we look back 20 years, finding ancient fragments of DNA from human fossils was a huge celebration in the scientific community. Now, scientists are able to retrieve entire genomes from human fossils. In Europe, scientists have gathered hundreds of genomes from people who lived in the past 10,000 years. They then sketched the genetic history of the continent to dates that precede the agricultural revolution. And in North America, scientists have retrieved genetic material from 11,000-year-old skeletons in Alaska, as well as the famous Kennewick Man, who died 8,500 years ago in Washington, D.C. And scientists have just realized that ear bones are densely packed with DNA, which allowed the discovery of the first human genome from Africa, hidden in the ear bone of a 4,500-year-old fossil in Ethiopia. And the difficulty in finding DNA in Africa is because the extremely hot climate breaks down DNA really fast. And while on the topic of apes, chimps are now officially an endangered species. This was announced on September 14, and any experiments on chimps now require a special permit, as is required to benefit the survival of chimps as a species. 2 new drugs that lower the levels of LDL cholesterol, also known as bad cholesterol, were approved this year by the Food and Drug Administration. And usually people who are at a high risk for heart disease try to get their LDL levels below 70. Well, this drug brings the LDL level down to the single digits. But the problem is that it's very expensive, as the drug by Sanofi Regeneron costs $14,000 a year, and another drug by Amgen costs $14,100 per year. But the question is, how will health systems in the world be able to support the cost of these new drugs? These were the main headlines this year concerning important scientific news. So now we're going to pass on to a subject that I absolutely love, just as much as I love science, and that's books. Goodreads, a website that helps avid book readers keep track of all the books that they read over the year, has published a list of all the most popular books voted for by the members of the website. And then they divided the books into different categories, including mystery, fiction, non-fiction, science, etc. And we're concerned with the scientific category. So I'm happy to announce that the number 1 most popular book of 2015 in the scientific section is Beneath the Surface, Killer Whales, SeaWorld, and the Truth Beyond Blackfish. This book tells the story of John Hargrove, who worked with 20 different whales in captivity. But as his experience with them deepened, he started to doubt that their needs could be met in captivity. So after leaving SeaWorld, he became the controversial star of the show Blackfish. He tried to expose the treatment of SeaWorld's orcas, those highly intelligent and social creatures. And now I'll list the rest of the books that made the list, if you want to take any notes. Headstrong, 52 Women Who Changed Science and the World. Voices in the Ocean, a journey into the wild and haunting world of dolphins. Forensics, what bugs, burns, prints, DNA, and more could tell us about crime. Elon Musk, Inventing the Future. What stands in a storm, 3 days in the worst superstorm to hit the South Tornado Alley. On the Move, a life. Brainmaker, the power of gut microbes to heal and protect your brain for life. Guts, the inside story of our body's most underrated organ. How music got free, the end of an industry, the turn of the century, and the patient zero of piracy. Beyond words, what animals think and feel. Becoming Steve Jobs, the evolution of a reckless upstart into a visionary leader. The Soul of an Octopus, a surprising exploration into the world of consciousness. The Brain's Way of Healing, remarkable discoveries and recoveries from the frontiers of neuroplasticity. Bold, how to go big, create wealth, and impact the world. Future crimes, everything is connected, everyone is vulnerable, and what we can do about it. Spare parts, 4 undocumented teenagers, 1 ugly robot, and the fight for the American dream. Neurotribes, the legacy of autism and the future of neurodiversity. Rain, a natural and cultural history. And so that's pretty much all for 2015. And 2016 is looking to be an even more exciting year. So stay tuned for all the latest scientific news and updates. And I hope you have an amazing year. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and like our video.